I am Grady Collane at the CapeCod.com News Center, joined today by a special guest who's going to be talking more about the controversies surrounding one of the region's fastest growing sports, that is pickleball, and especially the noise associated with it. Do you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners for us?
Yeah, hi Grady. Thanks for the opportunity. I am Rob Mastriani, and I live in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and here to talk about pickleball noise.
Now, you've come in today. This is, for those of you who are watching, we obviously have some tools of the trade. I wanted to ask a little bit about what your story has been. You're also the lead for a Facebook group online. You've connected with a lot of people who've had similar issues, that have lived nearby pickleball courts, had to deal with some of the noise. So I wanted to ask, tell us your story, essentially. When did your encounters with pickleball first start, and when did it maybe start to take that kind of downhill journey for you, essentially? So yeah, can you just tell us the story for our listeners?
Sure. It's let's go back 4 years, okay? And when I first heard the noise, I was in my backyard, and I thought, some kids playing around, doing what they usually do, and we lived near a school where the pickleball courts were located, Lawrence School in Falmouth. It's a very busy neighborhood, a very noisy neighborhood, a lot of joyful noise. It's why we moved there. I have 4 kids, and we raised our kids in this beautiful 1929 bungalow. And I worked on it for 2 years before we actually moved in. So from the studs, inside and out, very connected to that home. Only had one bathroom, unfortunately, but
Wow, nothing's perfect.
we got we learned a lot about each other. And so I heard the noise, and I said, what is that? And someone said it was pickleball. And I said, oh, cool. That sounds, right. People do a lot of crazy things on those courts, just like myself and my kids did, for 20 years. The next day it continued, and the next day, and the next day. And now I'm here and everyone's excited. And we've got 2 tennis courts converted to 4 pickleball courts. We have 1 dedicated court. And 80 people would show up on in the morning on certain days, and this is while school's in session, and it was surprising. So I'm speeding up the process of that part, but it got very popular very fast from the day it started. I, like any other kind of, middle-aged, slightly above middle-aged dad, I went down to town hall. What seems to be the problem? There seems to be some noxious noise coming from the courts. We need to make this stop. I'm sure you would understand. And they said, oh, no, those courts are, they were permitted, and they were, they didn't go through the due process. We never even heard about it. But pickleball is going to remain there. And I was kind of flabbergasted, because usually things, I think, generally, we're not making much of a ruckus about anything. And I'm like, and then I talked to my neighbors, and they said, yeah, no, it's awful. We hear it. My neighbors, who I got to know through this fight. This what started is this pickleball war that we now didn't realize at the time we were engaging in. I have a neighbor 40 feet away, 80 feet away, 150 feet away. They hear it. They were hearing it all day long. I was at 350 feet away. Folks in my neighborhood I never have spoken to, unfortunately. But that's the way it is. We're all very busy. And so we gathered together, and we decided we're going to go to rec department meetings, and we're going to go to zoning, and we're going to try to put a stop to this, because there's no way we can live with this in the neighborhood. And so that was the beginning of getting very serious about it.
And so, but they were pickleball. So excuse me, there were tennis courts there before. So, but that wasn't an issue for you guys. The noise wasn't as noticeable. We'll talk more about like the specifics of like the difference between the balls and stuff. But up until then, the noise wasn't a problem with the tennis.
Put it this way: we've got basketball, we've got baseball, we got football, we got cheerleading, we got sports after school. We have I was lighting off fireworks. I was probably one of the noisiest guys in the neighborhood. To be honest, but We all got along, all the neighbors. My neighbor was loud as heck. We had music playing late at night, and the school, of course, has a host of activities and announcements. And our street was actually a bit of a cut through, so we have some heavy truck traffic going by as well, and helicopter flying over to the hospital. So we're very close to town, very noisy, and this pickleball stands out. The pickleball noise, the impulsive noise, gunshots little brother, I learned is what sound engineers call it, was wreaking havoc on our lives and was having a very it was a toxin in our soundscape is the way I'm starting to describe it, and it was something that had to stop. And so we hired an attorney. We hired Saney and Associates, Jonathan Poloni, Victoria Damas. They were awesome. They said, you need a sound study. And this is what you need to do next.
Sure. By we, do you mean your family or like the
Oh,
neighborhood?
this is our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we put together a group of three of us, and then we added on three more people, three more residents. And what's so interesting about this is that what I've learned, because I'm in touch with neighborhoods and communities throughout the country actually now, and I'm tracking 300 locations and just 20 in Massachusetts. And what I've learned is that there's always going to be sort of a lieutenant, I guess, for lack of a better description. But there's going to be someone who's going to be taking all the hits, gathering together all the people, and organizing people, because there's so many people that do not want to get involved, and they have their own reasons why they don't want to get involved, and you have to respect that. Because what happens is that you expose yourself to a very vocal minority of players who want to play regardless of the impact that it's having on the neighborhood.
So what was the result? How did the lawsuit kind of work out for you guys, and what was ultimately the way that this kind of turned out for you?
Well, it was recommended that we go for a preliminary injunction,
Mm-hmm.
which is shutting down the courts.
Mm.
And we took our evidence, we took our sound data, we took our sound study, presented it to a judge, and Jonathan sort of wrapped it up in with the violations, the violations of the local ordinance, and state laws which are being broken, and we were able to get that preliminary injunction.
Mm-hmm.
And the town wanted to have that preliminary injunction dismissed, and that was denied by a second judge. So an injunction shows the likelihood of success if you go to trial. So we were able to demonstrate that, and the town, you would think, would start listening, but they were fighting back even more. And I gotta hand it to them, because it is a very it's like a pitchfork and torch mob that shows up at these meetings. Let me tell you something. So this is not a fair fight. If you have a problem with a neighbor, you have a problem with a barking dog, you have a problem with putting on a deck on your house, you're going to go to town hall, and you're going to quarrel with the leadership. You're going to quarrel with the codes, right?
Mm-hmm. Planning
So,
board.
mhm. Yeah, I think right. So what happens is we would show up at a meeting, a rec department meeting, or a zoning meeting, or a select board meeting, and talk about our issue, and it would be flooded with 50 pickleballers,
Mm.
right, with their signs, and they would talk about the health concerns and how it literally saved their lives. And I'm not going to question that. I think it's great if pickleball saved your life. Then, well, first of all, the doctors need to know this so that we can study and see the correlation between pickleball and and I mean, and I kid, but it's very real, the community that is formed by pickleballers, and it's necessary, and it's missed. but at what cost, right? I mean, how much lead in the water is okay? You know, how much noise can you make uh, before it's a hindrance to people's right to their peaceful enjoyment of their property?
Mhm. Now, as well, as part of this, you've also gone on to create a Facebook group. I believe it is Pickleball Noise Relief, if you can correct me on the title of that if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
But that has connected you guys to a lot of other people who've had similar issues in their local communities. Do you mind just talking a little bit more about what spurred you on to want to make this group? And was it just you and your neighbors at first, or like how did it grow to where it was today?
Well, that the problem is that you are a very small number of people affected by pickleball. I mean, with if you're within 500 feet of a court, you are being affected. If you're 25 feet, obviously, you can hear it inside your house. We had neighbors that could hear it inside their house wearing noise canceling headphones. A lot of us started on this other Facebook group called Pickleball Sound Mitigation, right? How do you reduce the noise, the sound
Mhm.
level is what they say. Um, we were getting harassed and bullied, to be frank, and threatened, just like we were courtside in our own neighborhoods, and just like we were online as well. And I said, I've been yelled at enough. I'm calloused. You can throw anything at me from a player to a zoning board to the town. It has no effect on me, which is wonderful. Was not like that before. And I've heard this from a number of people who have had to gone down this road to fight this problem. Um, so I needed to create a spot, a location, a Facebook group called Pickleball Noise Relief. And that is a location where people can share their stories. We're sharing trauma. We're
Mhm.
sharing success stories. We're sharing our pain, our grief. We're taking solace in one another's pain, and it was very healing. And and very valuable. So we started growing. And so I was hearing from people in Florida. I was hearing people obviously from all over Massachusetts, and then a woman from the West Coast contacted me. She said, I was going to start a similar Facebook group, but it just seems like yours is kind of taken off a little bit, faster than mine. Can I jump on, your Facebook page? And I said, absolutely. And so here's a woman, Nalini Lazowitz. She is incredible because she's an amazing communicator, right? And she's a big public, free speech person, right? And I mean, if it was up to me, I'd have, probably everyone's in Facebook jail. You're not following the rules, But she is like, no, we're going to bring these people along. We're going to talk with them, and we may not convert them completely, but we're going to educate them. It's an opportunity to educate. So what I didn't know about her was that she is this sort of Berkeley-esque activist, right? And that's who she is, and she's about change, and so she was very valuable. Another person that came into the group from the Midwest, Charles Leahy, he also, and she had a problem with pickleball noise. So it's through that shared trauma once again. Charles Leahy, retired attorney working at GE.
Oh. Mhm.
Well, I'm sorry, GMC. The
Okay.
auto that's
Auto. All right.
Michigan. So
I
we're
was like,
we're
geez, been
we're
big in
back
the
in
news
Michigan.
lately.
No, we're in Michigan,
Mhm.
and but a retired attorney working with, but also uh, a sound engineer,
Mhm.
right? So working with acoustics and in automobiles, and he had his pickleball noise problem. So he contacted me, and so he is very big on taking the legal route. And so he's sort of our pro bono help. So yes, we've grown over the last I think year and a half now
Mhm.
to we have 1,000 followers, which is a lot considering our audience,
Mhm.
right? But and we have our hotspot locations that we track. And as I said earlier, yeah, we have 300 locations. So,
Mhm.
and we're in almost every state now. And so when I travel down to Florida I meet these peoples. I meet these members, and I interview them. I talk with them, and it's the most diverse population. It's
Hmm.
I mean, you could live in a trailer, and I'm in your trailer talking about the pickleball courts in your backyard. I'm in your mansion in Boca Raton with a 20-foot ceilings talking about your pickleball noise problem, right? And you may be a you know you know a, you might be a Trumper, you might be a liberal, you might be it's all stripes,
Hmm.
and so yeah, so we're all coming together on that.
It's very interesting. You mentioned as well the educational aspect. You had already said before that they did the study and whatnot. Those who are watching the video are probably starting to wonder what these devices are in the background of our screen
Hmm.
today. So I want to ask a little bit more about some of the what is an impulsive noise? What was some of the measurements that were involved in trying to help prove that you were having some issues? And what are some of these things now that you have? I know that you have a van that you'll travel around and kind of show off some of the decibel noise. So can you just kind of tell us a little bit more about what you've brought in that kind of are part of your tool set?
Sure, Grady. Sure. So out of this fight that we're having, we connected with Lance Willis, Dr. Lance Willis, in Tucson, Arizona. Now he is the smartest guy in the room. He's one of the few sound engineers that has a PhD, and he has had a lot of success with over the last 10, 12 years, dealing specifically with pickleball noise. Victoria Dalmas, right, one of our attorneys, introduced me to him. Thank you, Victoria. And that really brought us over the finish line, I think, with our court case,
Hmm.
because what he does is he talks about the noise in a way that people can understand it. And if I can do justice for it, I hope I can. What I do know is that this noise, this impulsive noise, gunshot's little brother, it's not traffic, it's not loud music, it's not it's not a train going by,
Hmm.
right? It's not a party, right? So it is a percussive pop, right? That is a very short duration, hence the impulsive nature. And there's impulsive nature, then there's highly impulsive nature. This falls into the category of highly impulsive. So it comes to a peak in 2 milliseconds. Okay, so 2/1000ths of a second. All right, and that is a very distinct pop that rises above all the other noises that you might have in your neighborhood, above the vehicle going by on your road, my busy, heavily trafficked road, the train going by Mike and Braintree, and all the other noises that are supposed to mask this impulsive sound. Um, so, and this is where I can demonstrate a little bit
Hmm.
about what a little bit about the problem that we're having. So I'm going to measure, right,
Sure.
a 2 millisecond, 2/1000ths um, of an of a two 2/1000ths
Hmm.
with a yardstick. That seems to be not the best way to measure something that is probably this big, right?
Wow.
It's
Mm.
less than an eighth of an inch, certainly, right? Um, you so this prop
Hmm.
is not only accurate because it's the wrong measurement. We're using standard, not metric, right? That's a point worth noting. But it's also going to be completely inaccurate, right? You need calipers that are going to be able to measure to a very fine degree, right?
I see. I was wondering, even myself, I was like, what is the calipers for before we start? So that's the measurement that we're dealing with is just such a small scale.
Exactly. So I that might be 2 millimeters, right?
Hmm.
But I mean, it's even so. 2/1000ths is even smaller than that, right?
Hmm.
0.002. Okay. Now imagine trying to measure that with Amazon's most reviewed sound meter. Is that possible? people try, and they try to tell me that, oh, I'm capturing the sound, and people be walking around with their sound meter. And I'm like, that's wonderful, but it's completely inaccurate. So Dr. Lance Willis, he recommended that I purchase this sound meter.
Sure.
Unfortunately, this sound meter cost about $6,000, and the microphone is another $2,000, right? So the
Okay.
whole package about $8,000. Hard to believe.
Rob, I regret taking this into my hands now that you've mentioned the costs that I've leaned over, but I promise I'll be careful.
No,
But certainly, so a
it's
high piece of
insured.
equipment. It's insured. Well, that's good. So a high cost piece of equipment, very
Mm-hmm.
purpose built for the measure. So
Mm-hmm.
you've been using this in your travels as well for your own and for your own benefit as well as for other communities. So this is what you'll use to
Mm-hmm.
take the measurements going there for.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right, so that's very interesting. So this is something that so you have a truck as well, and well, a van that has been purpose filled with various tools like this.
Right.
So you'll pop up to Braintree and talk with some of these other members.
Grady, I will travel anywhere where people would like a sample of the sound. And what I found with this is it's a great conversation starter, right? You show up with a tripod and a sound meter near a pickleball court. It's going to generate a little bit of it's going to generate some conversation and a lot more, actually, right? But those are other stories. But what will happen is I'll be able to provide a sound sample with this sound meter that's going to accurately represent what's happening in these folks' neighborhoods. And when they come out, they ask me, "What are you doing? What's going on?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm just measuring the sound of the pickleball." And they will begin their story. They will begin sharing, and they will begin the emotional trajectory or the storyline from the beginning to the end. And while all the elements of that story are so common, it's that emotion, that individual saying that makes it fresh. And quite honestly, that's what keeps you going. That's sort of the rocket fuel that keeps me going, to the next town, to the next member, to the next place, to that next location to record that. And this sound meter is, I think it's the player's kryptonite. Sometimes I call it, right? Because it's telling the truth, and that there's a lot of misinformation about that. So it's me shouting from the rooftops, trying to help people understand what they're missing in understanding this sound, this noise that's taking over their neighborhood.
All right. So as well, while we're about coming up on time, but I also wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the other possible, what's the problems, but also some of the solutions. You've brought in some of the tools of the trade today as well. We had some of the balls. You also brought in a couple of paddles that I was hoping you can kind of show us, because one of them is different from the other. It is a padded. There's been a few efforts to try and make a quieter piece of equipment for these various games. So I was wondering if you can show off some of the differences between
Sure,
them.
Grady. Sure. So this is a Franklin X40. This is the classic pickleball,
Sure.
right?
So this is the resin cast, the plastic. That's the one that's used at most of the courts. Mm-hmm. And then this is also Franklin.
Yeah, and now this is right. This is a paddle. You can pick up this for $10 in at Walmart, right? And this is part of the problem, right? So USA Pickleball is really responsible for promoting this sport with their ambassadors, and so this is part of it's their propaganda machine. They are this marketing juggernaut that we're trying to get ahead of, and they share no responsibility in creating this noise. But USA Tobacco had no responsibilities for secondhand smoke, right? So that's what we're working on right there. So this. Right. This is what the guy.
That's the pop.
Yeah. So an ambassador will show up at a meeting with this paddle, and then they'll go to the owl paddle, which is going to cut the decibel level by 10. Right. So, right. And everybody will go, ooh, wow, that's fantastic. That's amazing. That's not real play, right? You get this out on the court, and I've recorded myself and people playing with the owl paddle. Will it decrease the decibel level? Certainly. But yeah, you're going from 80 to 70, okay? Now you need to go from 70 to 50, right? And that's a long way to go when you're on a logarithmic scale. So also, people love the pop. People will not play unless they have the pop. They actually say they're addicted to the pop. So I'd like to see, you know, you cannot enforce these paddles to be, you cannot mandate it. It's been tried and it's failed repeatedly. I would love an
Right.
example where these paddles are actually used in play.
So it's much thicker as well. Obviously, it's got some kind of like felt covering, but yeah, okay. So, but the enforcement is the difficult part too.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
all right,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Good thing
I
to
like to
fail.
say, we're coming for your paddles and balls. You can keep the guns.
That's the there you go. So, you have another ball here
Now,
as
yeah.
well. There's
So
been other
here's a
efforts.
ball, right? This is called the library ball,
Sure,
right? So much, yeah,
actually squeeze
spongier.
it.
Yeah, it's and now, n- now we're talking.
Hmm.
Now we're making some progress. But I have yet to see anybody playing with this sponge ball, right? And it's really, it's brutal. It's laughed off the court, and that's just the reality. Because I will show up with these library balls and say, "Hey guys, let's play with these," and they will not play with them, and then they'll just, that's ridiculous, we're not doing that. Because I really believe there is a connection that's being made with that makes this sport so exciting to people, right? It's that pop, and that's why you get that pop 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 and then that big yell at the end, right?
Hmm. So where do you so at what point do you think is the point of failure in this gym? Is it a design flaw where it's like this would be fine just over there? Or they didn't factor in how close maybe they were building these to residential districts. Of course, I assume part of the appeals when they first put in maybe the tennis court is that look, it's walkable. So is there like a sweet spot? Do you think they should have just been further in Mashpee? There was a proposal for an indoor court where it's like
Mm,
a stadium system that would be including like a possible a restaurant, a sports bar, stuff like that.
sounds
Is
good.
that the solution you'd like to see, or maybe just the town hands out some of these balls for free? What are some of the things that you'd like to see? Where do you think the point of failure was?
Well, we're not gonna throw all these solutions,
Mhm.
at this problem and get it an answer. I mean, at a certain point, when the problem is X and you're throwing, A, B, C, D, E, and F, to mitigate that problem, then something's wrong. Something needs to change, and so common sense setbacks. And we would love it if the leadership at USA Pickleball would simply just talk about it. But they barely talk about impulsive noise. They won't talk about common sense setbacks, which now, in a way, you're saying, so 25 feet is okay, 50 feet's okay. People wearing headphones in their homes is okay. What we've found is 0 to 250 is no fly zone, right? 0 to 250 feet. No pickleball courts should be built or put in place. They should be 250 feet away from homes. Now, it doesn't stop there. 250 to 600 feet, okay, is where you need to have permitting for a pickleball court, private, public, what have you, if it's outdoor. And a sound study needs to accompany that, okay? 250 to 600, okay? Beyond 600, you're going to get some complaints, but it's going to be tolerable to a certain extent. 1,000 feet, you're in good shape. Um, what I just relayed to you is what is the ordinance in Centennial, Colorado, right? That Dr. Lance Willis helped that town adopt.
Mhm.
And it's working. I mean, nothing's perfect, and sound travels a little bit differently in different circumstances, but you got to start somewhere. Um, what's going to happen between 0 and 250? You got to put it indoors. It needs a top. At Mashpee, right? Good example. They put in Acoustifence, which is a reflective surface.
Mhm.
All that did, the neighbors actually said it made it louder, right? And what also is interesting is that we can't talk to those neighbors because they moved, right? So the turnover in that neighborhood of 5 or 6 houses is 50%, right? And now I've got my new friend Ernie, in Mashpee dealing with this problem. He can't afford to move. And he built his house similar to me, and and so he's still dealing with this problem, and I'm hoping that we're gonna be able to get him some relief.
All right. Rob, I'm afraid we're about coming up on time, but thank you so much for coming in, sharing your story, talking a little bit more about how this has all been going for you. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight for our listeners while I still have you? Things that we might not have touched on that you want to make sure we hit while we're still having the conversation?
Uh, you know, this noise is a public health problem, and we are seeing correlation with poor health outcomes. I have a master's in public health. I'm working with physicians, and we're putting together a group of doctors that are going to be doing research on this. When you have a lot of stress being created by this noise creates that fight or flight response in your body. So rapid heart rate, and so it is exacerbating underlying medical conditions. And a good example is a kid with epilepsy, right? Jim Cantoni in Florida, his kid. He was the onset of seizures increased dramatically to the point where he had to move. And there is increased hospitalizations of neighbors in these areas. Do I have the data? Do I have the proof? Not yet. Not yet. But this is what we're working on. We have a committee of physicians, Mass General, no, this is top level, right? And
Mhm.
we also have a group of legal scholars working on this that are going to help educate community or town attorneys on this noise and how to handle it. And we have a model ordinance that is coming out from a reputable sound engineer,
Mhm.
Les, up in Vermont, that we're hoping is going to carry forth and really make a difference in communities. We're not against pickleball. It just is doing harm to neighbors, and that needs to stop. And
Mhm.
and when we won't stop. And that's actually my mission. I think that's what happens when people experience this injustice. It makes them into an activist. It energizes them to do more and help others.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Grady. Appreciate the time and the opportunity.
I'm Rudy Gillane in the CapeCod.com News Center, and thank you for listening.